I know you must be really, really connected to your God in order to be able to, pave this way.
I'm really so excited to be a part of your growth journey. And I wish you all the best. And I hope that, your podcast, like 1 year from now, people are talking about you in the same way that they talk about the big names now. And you're on the Spotify top lists of podcasts. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
Hello, 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 and welcome to my first ever podcast that I'm recording today with our very own Maria Mathai. Before I introduce her to our podcast, I would just quickly like to introduce you to our show. Uh, it's called The Power Moves Leaders in Business. And the core objective and the core reason why I wanted to host this show was with a pure intention to bring value to all the businesses out there. And also, I feel that once a person has taken that entire journey of being in business for quite a bit, there's so much wealth lying on the other side in terms of learnings that I, Shinam Khandelwal from SK Consulting, wanted to bring over all the way to you guys. Without much further ado, I'm just quickly going to introduce you to Maria Mathai's profile before I invite her to join us for this podcast series with us. Maria is the founder of Advisory Services, and she has been working for over 31 years in education, with 21 years in international education focused on India, Canada, student exchange. She's currently the advisory of two globally ranked universities of Canada, University of Alberta International and TMU. In 2014, Maria was awarded the Governor General of Canada's award by His Excellence David Johnston for her efforts in promoting Canadian education. All right, so welcome Maria to our first ever episode. We are so grateful for you to have joined us today. Without much further ado, I'm just quickly going to get into our very important questions that we want to ask you, and we want to sort of learn and understand from your journey of how you have, built Advisory and how you've made it a grand success. Maria, our first question to you is, what inspired you to start Advisory Services, and what was your vision?
So it's a very nice question, Shinam. But before I answer your question, I just wanted to say I'm really honored to be the first person on your podcast. And so, coming back to what you asked, which is, how did I actually think of starting Advisory? It was by accident. I had been working. I don't know if you saw my profile, but I started my career as a school teacher. Then, through different shifts, I ended up working for a Canadian government entity where I was acting as a counselor. I joined as a counseling advisor, and then I took over the company. And when that shut down, there was a series of circumstances that which helped me realize, at that time, Canada was not one of the most popular destinations. I'm talking 20 years ago. And right. I that there was a perfect match. Indian students were just starting to really consider going abroad. So I thought it was a perfect match where I could be a person, because I knew Canadian universities, and apart from the fact that I'm born and brought up in India, I have studied everything. Apart from life experience here, I also had education expertise in the international education market. So right. I see myself as the perfect person to bring it all together. Help students find Canada and help Canadian institutions find the right students. And I started off as an individual, just consulting. And then when I got my first contract with a Canadian university, I had to, when you sign up with a big university, especially a public university, the first thing they ask you is, what's your company name? And I was like, company to hai nahi, or the equivalent of an email. But then I rushed and I kind of set up my company formally. And they were very, the university was really great. They were very patient. They waited for me to work through all the formalities. And that's how Advisory Services was born.
Wow, what a story. I think that's how SK Consulting, I'm not saying it's the same, but definitely somehow a similar story has been woven in for me as well. I started out just by the way, somebody reached out to me saying, "Can you consult us?" And that's when it actually began. And that's when I actually thought, okay, it's time. Maybe I started doing something like this to add value to more and more businesses. Great, amazing. I'm thoroughly inspired to hear your story, Maria. Well, second question is, what were the biggest challenges in building India-Canadian, education partnerships for you?
So, okay, there are challenges and challenges. So, there are professional challenges, there are business challenges, and then there are personal challenges. I think for me, the work was not very difficult because I had expertise in it. I knew exactly what needed to be done, right? So, the work part of it was not a challenge. But getting institutions or getting universities to see that there is an opportunity in India and opportunity beyond what is the obvious, that there are a lot of students here who want to study. The other challenge professionally I had was that in India at that time, nobody really wanted to go to Canada. Everybody wanted, like, they were looking at other destination countries that they were more familiar with. And Canada was still perceived as a stepping stone to US. It did
And
not
this was
have,
in which year? Sorry to interrupt, but this was in which year?
this is in 2010.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
Yeah. So I think I started off like, 2010 is when the company was founded. So let's say about 2009, if I go a bit back. So as an individual, I think there was the timing was right because there were certain policy changes that we had worked on in my official capacity as the government of Canada, which came into action in 2009 and 10. And there were other things. So from that perspective, we were like, that I was nicely positioned to help the universities move on to a growth path.
Okay.
And yeah, so whether it like, that's where it started. I was consulting, I was getting approached. So that was at a professional level. But since your audience is people in business, entrepreneurs, women, I did want to say that there's a lot of personal challenges also that you face, right?
A
There's lack
lot.
of
A
confidence. Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of it. And for me, I had always worked in a structured environment. I had always been a salaried professional. Then my parents have also been salaried people. So in my immediate environment, there was nobody who had really gone into business. My dad had also like quit his job and tried to do a business, but it never worked out for him. So there are a lot of these kind of. So for me, the transition from a salary person to a business, it took some time to make. Second is I was working on my own. I started off work from home. And when
Right.
I reached a stage where I could hire people, I was
Right.
still working from home. And my biggest challenge was always when people would ask me, "Ki, where's your office?" And 2010, nobody, this is pre COVID. There was no remote working. Remote working, ke liye to, even when I would interview people to hire, they would be
Mhm.
like, is this a genuine place?
Yeah.
Even though internet and .com had happened, but still there were a lot of doubts about. On top of that, I was a woman, and there were a lot of things which would people and a lot of people would also refuse. No, I think we would prefer to work in a formal environment.
Sure.
But again, by sheer working through people and going through interviews, I found a few female employees who wanted the flexibility of a remote job because they had
Mm.
personal commitments
Sure.
and who ended up doing very well for me. So that was one. The other, I think, was the single biggest thing was, will I be able to do it? And why am I doing this? And what
Every
is
single
going to
day.
happen?
Every
Yeah.
single day question I ask myself and my heart and my soul. And sometimes I just want to run away from this world, but it all culminates back, I guess.
So with hindsight, because it's this is my 15th, almost going to be my 15th year. So with hindsight, I think it is those questions and those doubts which keep you going also. So I think it's good to have those doubts.
Sure.
And as long as you keep pushing forward.
Yes, yes. I think that's the most important of them all. I think execution is the god. Everything else is the muse, I think.
Yeah, and the other challenge, I think that's again a big one, is that you realize that you are everything, right? You are the person who's thinking, you're the person who's strategizing, you're the person who's executing, and you're
Hmm.
the person who's, yeah, pretty much doing everything. So you're the CEO and the peon, both.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Every day. Like that's how it is. And if you can't be, then you will not be
मतलब
the
कि
you know
अगर कुछ something as simple as a photocopy or a printout, there's nobody ki, oh, go and go get it, like when you're starting out, hopefully now
exactly.
of course in this day and age, you can get it through Blinkit, right? But at
Yeah.
that time, it meant like, if I had to do some taxation or whatever, say it's service tax or send it, you have to go physically and get it done. Then, or even if you have a printer at home, there are a lot of so there are a lot of situations where you have to physically go and do it yourself because
Yes.
there's nobody else to do it for you.
Absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed. And I think, thankfully, my father's been really kind and nice to support me with some basic amenities, but it still is a continuous challenge. And, at some juncture, you also want to make that leap of having to do or wanting to do everything by yourself, which to me, I think is the biggest growth pivot that I, as a person, am now taking, that leap that I'm taking as an entrepreneur and as a person as well, personally as well. Right. So, Maria, our next question to you is, as a woman entrepreneur, what major roadblocks did you face and how did you overcome them?
So for me, I think the biggest challenge was working on my own internal confidence levels. And I because I'm in the education industry. The education industry is dominated by women in India, right?
Right.
So to that level, I did not have too much of a glass ceiling. That kind of a situation did not exist so much. Because if you see, most, whether it's schools or colleges, people at the top are women. So
Yeah.
from my perspective, I think it was more of a challenge for me because my job involved traveling to all kinds of places in the country. So that
Right.
would lead me to, there would be situations where we would get stuck, and there was a bit of a vulnerability because I was a woman. So there was those kind of challenges which would arise because you're on the road, you have to travel 4 5 hours by car, situations. Thankfully, nothing was really bad, but we managed. But in fact, at a certain point where, in especially when we started, I was the joke of the family. Ki if she goes out for more than X amount of days, then kuch na kuch to ho hi jata hai, like kind of a thing. Ye ho gaya, ya wo ho gaya, ya aisa ho gaya. So I think
Right.
that the challenges associated with the work at that time was a bit. I also felt the fact that my clients were international,
Hmm.
right? And there were a lot of processes involved with having incoming currency.
Right.
And I completely was unequipped to deal with the financial and the, those kind of implications of dealing with banks. Ki what are the things that you have to do? The registration, us time pe service tax registration hota tha. So at that time, it was those kind of things we had done. But there were a lot of processes involved with even incoming transition like transactions and dollars. And
Hmm.
sometimes I would get a call from the bank manager at that time ki, okay, you've got this transaction, what is the reason for this, what is, they would grill and they would not understand that okay, this is consultancy fees,
Yeah.
consultancy fees, but yours is a proprietorship company in the Indian context, and that actually exists even today. If you're a proprietorship and you're a female owner, people assume कि या तो beauty parlor है या coaching institute है या there are these kind of set things that people assume कि you are running from
Prejudices.
one.
I'd like to call them
हाँ,
prejudices.
हाँ, कि or you have a boutique and these are
Yeah.
things that you're running from one room in your house. So how can you be getting so much of foreign currency in your account? Because I
Yeah.
did, again, like I said, it comes back to the fact that I did not have an office. I had a registered office address, but I did not have an office per se with a board.
Obviously.
Uh,
Right.
so that I thought was very, that was very difficult. And finances was always tough for me.
Sure.
Uh, yeah. So overcoming that was nothing, just hard work. Just keep explaining.
Right. Okay, Maria, so our next question is, how is advisory services adapting to shifts in international education?
Well, we have started, I think, from the beginning. Advisory has always had a very different kind of a role model, a model of operation. We were
Sure.
consulting, yes. There were no, there were no other companies at that time who were consulting for Canada. There were some who were doing for UK and Australia. So when we started, I think one of the first things that distinguished us that we were always very light and we were on our feet, and that is something that we have continued throughout, from the beginning to, till the COVID point and now. One of the things that really separates us is that we have always been agile, and that agility is also because we've been a small team and we've worked remotely. We've been able to, whenever the situation demands, we've been able to adapt. I'll give you a very simple example. Just 2020, right? Beginning 2020. It was a
Hmm.
very good year for international education, and things were just coming, news was just coming in from the beginning. And I was scheduled to travel to Canada on March 10th, right? And
Hmm.
I was supposed to come back on 30th. Thankfully, I did not, because I read the signs and I did not travel. But and I had actually already asked my team to shift to virtual calls. And I still remember that one team meeting that I had, and my staff were looking at me as if I was crazy. They were like, "Hey, like, no student and parent will agree to meet us on a video
Right.
call, but you are insisting that
Yeah.
we meet on video." So
Hmm.
at, there are certain points at which you do a hard stop, and I was like, we are not traveling, we are not doing this. You shift. And then within 2 weeks, the lockdown announcement came. And then, as you know, the world changed. So
Yeah.
there were a lot of situations in which we were ahead of the curve, which helped us,
Hmm.
take the changes required to
Sure.
handle the changes. It's like also last 1.5 years have been very bad for international education. Most
Hmm.
countries have, made policy changes, have made very strict announcements about changes. There's a lot of turmoil. So,
Is it pertaining to
you
Indian
know,
students or is it just across the
no,
world?
it's global changes. It's global
Okay.
changes. So it's not related to Indian students particularly. They've made a change which is applicable to everybody, including
Sure.
Indian students. Right?
Sure.
Then there's a lot of turmoil, currency fluctuations, bahut hai.
Hmm.
So students and parents also have a lot of questions. So in that kind of an environment, we're still operational. We're still providing the kind of services that a student and a parent requires. Where earlier we would spend maybe 1 or 2 meetings. If I have to do a cumulative, we would spend maybe anywhere between 60 to 120 minutes with one student or a parent. Now we're spending almost double or triple that time with a single student or a parent, because there is so many questions that they have. There is so many reassurances that we have to give. And most importantly, there is so much of misinformation which is spread. Right? See,
Right.
something as simple as one student goes over there and says something, puts it on Instagram. Suddenly that
Yeah.
becomes like, gospel through truth. It becomes like, okay, this is like, I saw it on Instagram or I saw it on WhatsApp. This is what happens.
Yeah.
But that is not what happens, because we're talking about a big country, right? We're talking about a big country. We're talking about people. Yes, there are so many experiences that people have.
Yeah.
99, most of them are positive, but a few happen. So we've had to make a lot of changes to how we operate. And I think our advantage has always been that because we are small and
Hmm.
because it's a very well integrated team, we've been able to make the shifts very fast.
Which is great to know. I think agility is the key to winning, especially in today's market when it's become so competitive. With especially AI coming in, I think it's become even more competitive for market players to make sure that they go with times. Otherwise, they're going to be left behind like this. And it's sad but
Mm.
true. The truth of today's market, and you have to keep facing up with the market in order to be able to sort of keep you know keep being there. Great,
Yeah.
awesome. So my next question is, what are the biggest milestones in your career and what lessons did they teach you?
Well, career means everything, right? Not just my business.
Yes.
Okay. So I think, yeah, career is very long. I won't say how many years,
But I
but
think
I
let's
think,
focus on your business perhaps
yeah.
for our
So
viewers.
I was actually, the biggest milestone for me was when I made the shift from a salaried professional to a business person, right? That was, I think that is a kind of a defining moment where you change the course of how your life is going to be.
Hmm, hmm,
So
hmm.
that's the biggest milestone. If I have to look back on my career, that's that point. Now within my business, my first client, it is that is somebody who you never forget. Like the first
Yes.
person who trusted you with their institution's work. Like Bhanu is somebody that I will always, always, always remember. He was my first client. Then your first big brand name, right?
Oh yes.
So
100%.
when
100% agree.
that you get one of the top 5 universities or one of the top 100 in the world, that that is again a moment that you don't forget.
Yeah.
The first time, my first batch of students who went, it
Hmm.
was a very small batch. It was just maybe about 30 or 40 students, but the first batch of students who went, and I was like, oh, I helped them. Like, this is all me from 0 to 100. We did it all. This is all I remember. These 40 students would not have gone otherwise. So
Right.
that, then of
I
course,
know
I
the
think,
feeling.
oh,
I
yeah,
absolutely relate with that feeling because I think that those milestones are setting in for me. Since we just begin, like we began in the last 1 year.
yeah.
Please say
So I think I'll stop at three because I could go on.
okay. Uh, can we move on to the next question then in that case?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Mario, next question is that how do you mentor and support women in business and entrepreneurship?
So this is something that I have started to do very recently, and in fact, a lot of change has happened in me after I joined this Goldman Sachs 10,000 Women Entrepreneurs program. Right. One of the challenges that I could have mentioned before was कि I don't have, like, I think I just briefly referenced it. I didn't have any business knowledge. So doing that course really changed my whole overview on how I am operating my business and what I'm thinking of. So after doing that course in 2020, I became a bit more aware of the fact that there is a gap. And of course, nowadays the environment is also such. So last 3 years, I have been actively trying to support women in my industry. Like,
Sure.
even when I'm hiring people, whether I
Hmm.
hire them or not, when I speak to women, I always tell them that, okay, like, I may not be hiring you, but if you need any help in the industry at any point, you can
Hmm.
always call me. And initially, people, like, people would just look at you and say, ki, okay, you're not hiring me, but I say grandiose claims bol rahe ho. But, like, half the times there would be this skepticism. A lot of people don't believe you. But I
Yeah.
have two or three people in the last 3 years who've connected with me separately, saying, ki, you
Right.
offered, you're serious. And I was like, yeah, I'm serious. I talk to them, and whenever they're in a situation where they
Yeah.
need somebody's expertise or experience to help, I'm able to help them. Apart from
Right.
that, when we work with vendors, we work with people. Like, see, when you're in a position to give business, people are always approaching you. So I
Hmm.
do try to, whenever we have any kind of a situation, I do try to see that for representation, there are female driven companies as well.
Hmm.
And when I meet with people who are running, again, education may, like I told you, there are a lot of women in the industry, but most of them tend to be in the occupation part of it. But
Right.
this is the
Yeah.
best thing about the last 5 years. A lot of women are leaving their jobs and starting their own, like, their own businesses,
Consulting.
startup, whatever in the area. So
Right.
I think I've seen more people, more female businesswomen in this industry in the last 2, 3 years than I've seen in the last 10. So that's a very positive, and it's a open thing from my side. Anybody in my industry who can benefit from my expertise, I'm happy to help.
I think
Structured way mein, do I take on, like, I'm registered in a couple of sites as a mentor. So if I get a mentor, but my industry is so niche, I don't ever get anybody from my industry. But if somebody else has questions, I'm always happy to answer them.
no, of course, I truly know the kind of conviction it takes for a person to build onto something like this. And our last question, well, last but not the least, is what's next for you and MM Advisory Services in the coming years?
So we're looking at expansion, obviously, of services. We have focused on, like, I've dabbled with increasing countries, moving beyond Canada, and having other countries, adding those to my portfolio. But
Hmm.
mine is a very, like I said, a very niche service. I'm not in the, like, it's a boutique service. I don't keep adding one client every month, or, like, one client
Sure.
every week, that's not what drives me. We work with
Sure.
very few universities, but we commit to those universities 100%, and we build their brand. So
Sure.
people may or may not have heard of Advisory, but they have heard about the institutions that we
Of
represent.
course.
And that's their, like, that's what our goal is, that our client. So maybe in some ways, we are the white labeling products, like, company who are white labeling for universities. So I
Sure.
am exploring other countries. That is one. We're also looking at having some kind of a counseling division for different countries, which is aligned with our own objective of providing study abroad counseling. And, like, I really wanted to simplify study abroad. There's a lot of hype. There is a lot of people make it seem very complicated, make it very difficult.
Hmm.
uh, for most countries it is not difficult. There are one or two countries and a few universities that yes, it is difficult for. I will not say that it is easy to get into an Ivy League university. No, it is not. But for the most, it's a very, very simple industry. In fact, in some cases I feel it is simpler to apply to a foreign university than it would be to apply to an Indian university. So
Wow.
that's my goal, to further simplify the study abroad process so that anybody who wants to thinks that they can do it on my own. Like I am a counselor, right? And for me, counseling has always been helping you find your way. Not
Right.
that I do everything for you, right? That's not counseling. So if
Mhm.
I'm able to help you find the right university, help you find the right country that you want to, then my job is done. So that's I want to focus a bit more on that.
So it's more like matchmaking for you, right?
Yes.
Matching the right students to right universities, and that's where you play the Cupid for students.
Yeah.
Universities.
Exactly that.
And I also wanted to quickly, for our audience's sake, I also wanted to, request and request you if you could share a few of your client portfolios that you have served and you are working with. I think it'll add immense value to our viewers. Maybe if somebody thinks they'd like to get their kid enrolled, and if they stand by the criteria, I think it'll be of great importance to them as well.
Yeah, I've worked with University of Alberta, University of Guelph, Toronto Metropolitan University. I've worked with different provincial governments like, British Columbia, Manitoba, Alberta government, like also Ontario government, Atlantic Canada. So I have visited, I think, most universities in Canada. So these are like University of Toronto, UBC, McGill. These are all universities that people consider Waterloo. Uh, then if I look at East Coast, Dalhousie, St. Mary's, Alberta,
Wow.
University of Alberta, I've already mentioned. Your Toronto
Hmm.
Metropolitan University also I've already mentioned. So there are quite
Right.
there. Like, I could keep listing.
That's amazing. I think it was such a great conversation to be with you to, learn about your journey. I think it was a very organic conversation, from both the ends, and it was truly, truly amazing and valuable to us. And I'm sure it's going to be truly, truly valuable to our audiences as well, whoever ends up watching our, podcast. And I'm really looking forward to having more conversations with you, Maria. If in case anybody in my family, friends, or in my network wants to get enrolled for a Canadian university, you will be the first one who will come in my mind, at least. You will be the first advisor who will come in my mind. And thank you so much for joining us on this show. It's been a true pleasure. Just want to request if you have any parting notes for me, my team, anything that you think we could help you out with as a marketing agency. I think that is something we'd love to enable you with.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Sheenam. I mentioned this earlier also. I'm really so excited to be a part of your growth journey. And I wish you all the best. And I hope that, your podcast, like 1 year from now, people are talking about you in the same way that they talk about the big names now. And you're on the like Spotify top lists of podcasts. So let's keep our fingers crossed.
That shall happen soon, hopefully, if God's willing, that shall happen soon too.
Conviction, conviction, and consistency. I think
Yes,
these two things will keep you on track.
I have kept it in mind and I will continue to keep in mind as we go forward. Thank you so much, Maria. Thanks a lot for your time and thanks a lot for joining us on this conversation.
My pleasure, Seenam. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that podcast and enjoyed my conversation with Maria. It was a true honor to have her join us and like, share, subscribe our channel, guys, because the journey has just begun and we are here to bring you the most killer insights when it comes to the entire business landscape and trying to get you content that can truly, truly make a mark for you and your businesses. Well, on that note, if you are a business owner, if you think somebody has been on that journey of creating an impact in this entire business landscape, drop in a comment down below, tagging them, suggesting them over to us. And if we find them and their profile credible enough, we'll definitely reach out to them and we will get them on for our next podcast. Until then, I will see you soon. Take care. Bye bye. See you.